morning. I'm Kristen Balasia, Head of Automotive Advisory at IHS Markit, and welcome to this edition of Fuel for Thought. Today, I'm joined by my colleagues Mike Wall, Executive Director, Automotive Analysis, and Sandra Zhou, Director, Dealer Network Development. Good morning, and should I say good evening to you both?
Good morning, Kristen. Thank you for having me.
Morning, Kristen. Happy to be here.
Great. Well, today we're going to be talking about China and how the auto industry is getting a welcome lift from the region, and how Chinese consumers and regulators are really driving growth, even as a surge in COVID-19 cases in the US and Europe temper demand elsewhere. Mike, why don't we start with you? Set the stage for us. We released a new forecast a couple of days ago. Can you share the latest on what we're seeing in the market and in the way of maybe production and sales recovery?
Yeah, definitely happy to. It's been interesting to see as we've all been navigating this pandemic. China has really led the way and really led other markets in kind of facing these uncertain times. The country's done a good job containing the virus and limiting spread. And I think that's been a key factor. Also, we've seen incentives from cities and provinces throughout the market, helping fuel sort of the sales recovery, the production recovery as well. And as you noted, we did recently release our latest forecast update. In fact, on November 13th, and with that, we upgraded our outlook for China production by just over 300,000 units for this year, for 2020, and then by about 211,000 units for 2021. So again, really a measure of kind of that ongoing recovery and improvement within the market. For 2020, we're now forecasting a decline of 6.1%, which, while it sounds bad being a decline, it's far better than where we were expecting earlier on in the pandemic, kind of thinking that April-May timeframe. And indeed, for 2021, we're projecting a return to growth of about 5.4% for the year.
Sandra, you're in Shanghai right now, and many or most of us really can't get on a plane and see the market firsthand. Can you share some local insights as to consumer sentiment, what you see driving dealer foot traffic that we've heard so much about, maybe OEM efforts and governmental influencing factors?
For sure. We have been seeing a very solid recovery in the dealer traffic and the sales numbers. And also the customers has demonstrated a lot of changes in their purchase behaviors, which cannot be ignored. First, we have seen that concern has been raised in terms of the safety and public health using shared mobility and public transportation. So people intend to choose to minimize their contact with the others. This will slow down the transition of car buyers from owning a car to using a car. Another interesting thing we have been noticed is the customers has shown a increasing willingness on direct contact to the OEMs or car manufacturers instead of completing the purchase behavior or the purchase process with the dealers. This has stimulated the OEM's direct involvement in the customer journey, including the car information gathers, model configuration, and even test driving, pricing, negotiation, and so on.
Interesting, thanks. So Mike, we see a variety of OEMs, including GM, Toyota, Honda, heavily relying on the Chinese market for their growth. And in fact, those Japanese OEMs recently announced that they've more than doubled their recent profit forecast, thanks in part to growing market share in China. What should the industry be learning from this?
It's a great point. And, I think a key learning from this is just how critical the China market continues to be for the industry. It's a key market, as we're all navigating the volatility in various regions. The solid recovery in the premium segment's a great example too. You touched on some of the automakers who've commented on their performance. I'm reminded of, I think, BMW in their Q3 profit call, or their earnings call, noted the rebound in China demand really helping them navigate this recovery in its own right. Even many of the mainstream automakers, some of which you noted, also noted the China sales recovery supporting their profits. Another thing to think about too is just the growth within the new energy vehicle category. So think battery electric vehicle, plug-in hybrid vehicle, fuel cell vehicles as well, has really been key. driven by favorable policies and incentives in the market. NEV sales in October were up 104.5%. I mean, significant growth. It's still a growing market. So, I mean, in terms of overarching volume, again, we're still somewhat in the early stages, but growth, strong growth nonetheless. So if we think about automakers such as Tesla, SAIC GM, SAIC VW, and others are really poised to benefit from this trend and growth in NEV offerings, particularly as they come out with their own offerings to hit the market.
Yeah, great point. Great point. And those new vehicles, and along with the government incentives of those new vehicles, seem to be really driving consumers back, right? And the pent-up demand, possibly, Sandra, as you mentioned, the move away in some cases from public transportation. And we've seen this. We've seen customers in our data quickly and in number returning to the dealerships and auto shopping in general. Our data shows that in many cases, retail visits and service are outpacing 2019 levels. What are some of the new approaches and considerations specifically that are being evaluated and implemented by maybe OEMs or dealers, Sandra?
Well, the pandemic has accelerated the exploration of the new retail and the digital marketing transformation by car companies and dealers. So we can see that Chinese car companies, they have launched a lot of digital customer care programs. We have witnessed great enhancement in online service capabilities when consumers cannot visit a dealer, especially on digital customer touchpoints, such as utilization of the live streamer, VI showroom, etc. And we also anticipate it will become the new normal post-COVID as a supplement to traditional distribution channels. Meanwhile, car companies has expanded direct access to the consumer information, and for sure it enhanced their understanding in the customer behaviors.
And Sandra, that's so interesting because I mean we get asked so often what is going to stick, right? What is the new normal going to be versus what are different strategies and technologies that have been implemented because they've had to, and what will the consumer maybe continue to expect or demand in the future, and how will that help position different OEMs or different dealerships depending on that ease of experience and customer interaction. And it's really interesting to see. So thank you. And, Mike, you mentioned, China obviously being such an important market. And you mentioned some well-positioned OEMs, but even the well-positioned OEMs in China can't forget about the rest of the world, right? US and Europe. Can you give us a quick update on the latest in those regions?
No, absolutely. Yeah, you're absolutely right. When you look at Europe and the US or North America, still very critical markets, whether it be from the mix of vehicles that are sold, the margin and the trim levels that are sold as well. We have to keep them in mind. And it's an understatement to say that, uncertainty is still running high. It is, absolutely. Many countries are still struggling to contain COVID-19. Europe is of particular concern as a number of countries, as of this recording, a number of countries have instituted new lockdown measures, impacting roughly 30% of dealerships in some of those underlying markets. As a result, we have made some downward revisions to Europe in particular with our November update, particularly for 2021. In the U.S., sales have been remarkably resilient. It really has been amazing to see. Yet we're facing a second wave of our own, impacting a number of states. So while sales have outperformed, and in general we still remain quite positive and constructive on sales in the U.S. You look at our sales forecast for this year, we're sitting at roughly 14.3 million units U.S. light vehicle sales and 15.5 million units for next year in 2021. However, given the risks around additional lockdowns, we are tracking that as part of a pessimistic scenario within our contingency forecast as well, just to factor in some of that downside risks that may face the market.
Right. And what an interesting time, right? Half of the news stories are about promising vaccines, and the other half are about continued lockdowns or or increase in restrictions in some of the places across Europe and the US. So interesting. But like you said, certainly reasons to be positive, and certainly a lot of reasons to keep a close eye on the situation.
Absolutely.
So Sandra, going back to China and what COVID has taught us, you mentioned the changing consumer expectations. You talked about some of the accelerated new dealer approaches. China's moving fast, and they were moving fast before COVID, right? With some innovative formats and customer engagement. Can you just talk a little bit more about that? I think it's so interesting. And with you there and, working in this space, and just share a little bit of the details for, again, those of us that can't hop on a plane right now and go over and walk through some of these formats or experience these firsthand.
Yes, for sure. Yeah, a lot of interesting things are happening in China. Major trends here in this market includes the increasing diversification in sales channels, dealer downsizing, and the service network transformation. We have seen various kinds of innovative formats in China, such as mobile experiencing centers, pop-up stores, brand experience center, or brand museum in high footfall downtown area of large cities. VR showrooms is becoming more common. It is able to provide car specifications, information to the customers, and also support model configuration online as well. We also see startup companies, they have more company-owned stores in their network. This new format has shown a very clear trend to increase online transition of the sales activities to improve the dealer profitability by reducing cost of a dealership and to enhance OEMs participating in customer experience at a very early stage of customer journey. And this trend has been leading to innovations in terms of the network developing strategy by city network optimization or transition plan, dealer profit model, and the sales conversion rate monitoring. OEMs also intend to bring their service network closer to the car owners to further optimize the customer convenience and satisfaction. Expansion of the service network coverage with flexible service points formats or through the third-party service providers will be the key.
Yeah, that's really interesting, and I think it highlights that brick and mortar isn't necessarily going away, but there is a potential consolidation and increased efficiency around the footprint, what it looks like, the different touch points, and even the digital that experience that you mentioned. It's kind of, online, offline, engaging with the customer, making sure it's seamless, making sure that it really does lubricate the process and doesn't make it inefficient or frustrate your customers. And as they, the markets, I'll say, try out these different approaches, I think the ones that really get it right will be the ones that, whether it's as we continue to kind of weather and wait out this storm, or on the outside or backside of this, Sandra, when you mentioned the new normal, that will be the best positioned, the ones that have really taken this opportunity to evaluate and take action around, efficient dealer networks, dealer profitability, OEM direct interaction with consumers, and really understanding those pain points. A great point as to looking at all of those things and maybe using China as an example market that is maybe a little bit further ahead in some cases than others, and really, really interesting. So thank you both so much, Sandra and Mike, for joining this episode of Fuel for Thought and having this interesting discussion on China with me today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
To opt in to our newsletter that provides links to more information on this topic and others, visit ihsmarket.com/auto newsletter. Thanks for listening. Have a great day, and we look forward to speaking with you next month.